and then he started talking about drugs and the chemotherapy, and he went through the cost of some of those, and Mum just about fell off her chair because I remember one of them was about $120,000. And I couldn't speak because that is so much money. I never have savings.
Don't have a casual 120 grand to drop.
No, I don't have any money. I've got stage 4 bowel cancer. We're going to talk about everything from my diagnosis to treatment and how things are going right now. Talk about the things that people might be curious or want to hear but are too frightened to ask.
That's Jo McKenzie-McLean, and I'm Colleen O'Hanlon. We've been mates and colleagues at Stuff for 20 years. Since her diagnosis, Jo's been incredibly open about her illness on social media, and in this podcast, she wants to go further.
So I'm just hoping that what we do here can just help people who are on that journey, whether they've got cancer or not, and make them feel that, that they're not alone.
I'm going to be with Jo every step of the way. There will be tears and laughter. She'll also offer practical insights, support and hope. This then is the story of Jo versus cancer. Hi Jo! At the end of the last episode, when we were sitting here having, this conversation, we were talking about, you've been diagnosed with cancer after a long journey to get that diagnosis, and then having a really confronting conversation around your health position. You'd been in and had a radical surgery in your bowel. Was it 3/4 of your bowel was removed? Had some pretty dark and intense and intimate moments with your partner, and you've gone home and you've shared some quite frightening news with your kids. So what happens next? You take a deep breath and I guess how does the plan come together?
Okay, well, I was focused really just on recovery from the surgery so I could get straight into treatment. So I was told that it would probably be like 4 weeks recovery, 4 to 6 weeks. So I did that. I recovered really well. I did everything I needed to do. And then at the same time, I was waiting for a phone call from the hospital to see what my treatment plan would look like. Mm-hmm. They meet every Thursday. There's about, I don't know,
like 20, a group of doctors.
Yeah, a whole cross-section like radiologists, oncologists, surgical teams. There's a whole group of them that meet, and they go through each patient's file and they decide, okay, so, what is the best plan and whatnot. So
do you have, in that scenario, do you have one doctor who is your, is he the lead on your plan, or he or she,
There was this woman who kind of acted as a bit of a go-to. She told me when to expect the call, and then I got a call from Chris Jackson.
Right.
So I got...
And he's your oncologist.
He is my oncologist, and he phoned me, and he just explained that I was going to need a PET scan and...
What's a PET scan?
So a PET scan is you come to Christchurch and they give you a glucose, put glucose in you, and it picks up where all the cancer might be in your body.
So is that one of those scans where it turns a different colour or something? Like how do they?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not sure what PET scan stands for.
No, me neither. But anyway, that's okay. Maybe it's a deep dive into the details. We don't need to.
It's quite intense though, and it costs a lot of money.
An intense thing to undergo, you mean?
Yeah, and it's expensive, and that showed just the extent of where the cancer had spread. So it was about 5 weeks later, I saw Chris in person. I went down to Dunedin, and he had the PET scan results. I'd also had CT scans and MRIs. I've had so many of these scans. And so by the time I sat down with him, he had all of the information there. I had also had blood tests and all sorts. And I had my parents with me. And I remember, he was so lovely and really kind, but quite brutally honest about what was happening and how bad my cancer was and where we go to from here. he explained that I had stage 4 bowel cancer that had metastasised and spread to my liver, and he said that the tumours in my liver were, there were multiple lesions in there that made it inoperable. They were across my, across the whole liver. Apparently you need to have at least a third of your liver clear to be able to operate. So an operation wasn't on the table, and he said that my tumour was quite gnarly, big, and that it had perforated the bowel wall, and that there's 4 ways that cancer can spread, through your lymph nodes and blood vessels and whatnot, and it had spread all 4 ways. And he said that the cancer cells would be in my bloodstream and potentially, be going through my body, and they could
set up shop somewhere else.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So, that was really difficult news to take, and my mum found it really hard. I remember she started crying in the room, and I was sort of sitting there quietly in shock, and and then he started talking about drugs and the chemotherapy, and he said that there were lots of options for us, kind of tried to get us not to panic, but, he said that, there are drugs that can extend life, and he went through some of those, and a lot of those were ones that are not funded by the public system, and he went through the cost of some of those, and Mum just about fell off her chair, because I remember one of them was about $120,000, and I couldn't speak, because that is so much money. I mean, I live by myself with the kids and have a mortgage and
all the other costs that daily life comes with, right?
I mean, I live on, I never have savings.
Don't have a casual 120 grand to drop.
No, I don't have any money. I have all of my, I have a house. That's my only asset.
Yep. Like most New Zealanders.
And I don't, I was just like, oh my God, how on earth am I going to pay for this to, stay alive? And so that was a really, really traumatising appointment. It was, a lot of things were thrown at us, and we left feeling pretty stunned and pretty, Mum was kind of like, what are we going to do? I was like, we just.
So in that appointment you were told bowel cancer stage 4 and it's in your liver, it's inoperable, and the drugs that might extend your life are seemingly beyond the realm of possibility because of the price tag that comes with them.
Yep. And then I had to have a procedure where they put this portacath in me, and that happened pretty quickly. Like at that same over the next couple of days, it was a bit of a whirlwind, and it's like this hard plastic circle thing that they insert under your skin, and there's a tube that goes up through your neck and down into your body. And it looks like an alien kind of.
It sounds quite traumatic.
And invasive. To have really invasive, and it was horrible. Like, I just remember that was quite horrible for me. And the doctor who did it was so nice, Dr. Lau, I think his name was, and he was really kind, and they're so kind. Like, I could not fault any of the medical staff there. The care was really, just really good. And but yeah, so he took me up to this. I remember going up to this room where they insert this, and there were a group of women there, and they were all older women, all gowned up, and they were all staring at me, and and all sort of smiling, and they all kind of looked like nanas. Like, it was really weird. And it was like I was in a dream. I felt like I was in, that Grease movie when that woman with red hair goes,
Beauty Frenchie.
And that song,
Beauty School Dropout.
Yeah, that. And they've got all those women in the clouds with those weird cones.
Yes.
I felt like I was like that. That was me going, da, 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 da. And I was floating, and I got onto this table, and I was kind of like talking to these ladies. And it turns out, anyway, these women are all retired nurses. They all go and they all come in just for this particular job. They volunteer or something.
There's support.
They help with the operation. They're all retired nurses, and they all come in just for this particular thing. I always thought that would make quite a cool story, actually. It was just really weird. All these retired old nurses around me who come in just for this particular job, just to help out. It was kind of strange.
It's kind of amazing too that people feel about their job that way after they've retired, even, right?
Yeah. It was quite weird and lovely. It was quite... Anyway, so, I got this thing put in, and the next day, the drugs started.
So what drugs start going on? And are these unfunded drugs already?
So one of them was unfunded, and one of them was one that was funded through the public system. But because I was going private, I pay for it. Right. I pay for everything. I pay for all my drugs. So
even the drugs that you would, if you had gone through the public system, even the drugs that would have been covered in the public system, you are paying for in the private system because you can't double dip.
Yes. And so the first lot of drugs I was on, it was a combination of different drugs, and some of them were ones that were funded in the public system, and some of them were unfunded. So they do. I have multiple drugs at a time sometimes.
So did you and your family have to have, given it was a day or two after an appointment with Chris Jackson, you're already on unfunded drugs within that short window? Did that mean you had to have a really financially hustle really quickly in order to start that treatment?
Yeah. So luckily with my insurance, that was able to help kickstart it. So I had the money through my insurance company to start covering that initial round. The initial round,
yeah. But
that does not last long. It exhausts pretty quickly. So up until the figures have up until April this year, I'd spent $160,000 on drugs, and since then I've been on drugs that, for example, one that I was on was costing me $5,000 every 3 weeks.
Right.
So that number, I think at a guess, I'd be looking at closer to probably $200,000
since the start of 2021.
Yep, since start of February 2021. So that's a lot of money. And when we came home, luckily, I've got a couple of friends who are really, go-getters, and they were immediately jumped up and said, we are going to start doing some fundraising for you. And initially I was horrified at the idea. Initially I was quite reluctant, and it was quite embarrassing.
It's hard to ask for help.
Yeah.
And maybe asking for financial help is the hardest kind of all.
Oh my God, yeah. And I was... Initially, I was like, no, it's too embarrassing. I don't want that attention. But then, when I started to think about it and think about how I would pay for the drugs, I kind of just accepted the fact that I had to just put down my barrier and just lose that kind of...
Well, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Really. So you've spent, a fortune on unfunded drugs since you started treatment, nearly $200,000 since the start of 2021. And I think from previous conversations you've told me that that a lot of the money you've paid is actually GST. So that even though you're funding those drugs yourself, you also pay GST on top, which is on $200,000, not an insignificant amount of money at all. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it wasn't until I looked at one of my invoices, actually it was Michael looked at one of my invoices, and we were quite stunned at how much GST was coming put on top, like thousands of dollars. So like the invoice that we looked at, it had 21 grand had come off on GST. And, we were kind of like, oh my God, that's like, that could have paid for one of my treatments. Like one of the drugs, Avastin, costs 20 something grand. So, and that's an unfunded drug that's funded in Australia for people, but unfunded in New Zealand. And I was thinking, shit, that money could fund someone's
extending
life.
drugs.
Yeah. And I think it's really unfair and quite outrageous that the government won't fund drugs that can improve the quality and quantity of somebody's life. And we have to go to all sorts of extents to raise money, find money to pay for these drugs. People are donating money for us to pay for drugs. And yet the government is taking the cream off that. They're taking thousands of dollars from money that people have donated. People for our treatment. I think it's really, really it's something small. It'll be small to the government, but it's huge to people like me who are trying to all sorts of ways to find money, and some people just can't find that money, so they're dying. I think it's something that the government should really, really be looking at, and something small that they could do to just help thousands of New Zealanders, help with this treatment that they're not paying for. Like they don't, but yeah, they're taking money off us.
It's a drop in the bucket in terms of the tax coffers, right?
Yeah.
But really meaningful impact in terms of a treatment program for individuals who've raised that money for themselves. Mm-hmm. God, Jo, it feels to me like when you're grappling with a health crisis and some really, unimaginable kind of internal conversations, that the last place you want to put your energy is having to worry about money. Even though I know that for most people, if not, all who are suffering from cancer, it becomes one of the primary things you have to deal with, right? Is that if it's not paying for treatment, maybe it's not being able to work or whatever,
Yeah, and like I said to my oncologist, what happens to people who don't have the money to pay for these drugs? And, he said, well, they don't get the treatment, and unfortunately, their life is cut short. It's awful. And I almost felt guilty. I almost felt this guilt because I was getting treatment, and I thought about all of those people because, my oncologist said that the majority of people aren't in my position, haven't had the help that I've had. My community has been incredible, and they have raised thousands of dollars for me that I've used for treatment. And not just the community. I mean, I've had New Zealanders, I've had to give a little page set up, and strangers from all over the country and outside of the country have donated money, and not just money, but I've been given other support. People have dropped around food. I've had meal trains set up because cooking's been difficult with the kids, and when I'm sick and stuff. And I've had people, baking, leaving things at my door without even their name, just a card, and I don't even know who they are. And I've had people. I had a group of Rotarians come around and do my garden. I had my garden had just got out of control, and it was really overwhelming me. It was so silly that I felt like that, but. I don't know.
Would you have any really? Because I guess in that scenario, communities, a lot of people would want to help, and maybe don't know where to start or what's appropriate or what would be welcome even. So, would you have any thoughts or suggestions on these are the ways in which you can support somebody that is meaningful to them?
I guess everyone's different, and people will have different boundaries and different levels of, privacy. Some people might actually just want to be left alone. So I'm just speaking for myself, and, maybe other people, might be in my situation. But things like the meals, the gardening, I got given some vouchers, like grocery vouchers, just that's helpful.
You know, I remember one time seeing on Facebook too that you were unable to go to school sports and that one of your friends had videoed it for you so that you could see your kids' races even if you couldn't be there. And I just remember the joy that you seem to have in that, which is a small thing for somebody to do but really meaningful for you.
Yeah, that kind of thing is amazing because, a lot of the time I am stuck at home, unable to move. And previously I would be at all of the kids' events. I was heavily involved in a lot of those things. And it is really hard not to be there. Like it's quite painful. So actually I didn't even ask them to do that. People actually just did that. And I was so grateful. People are amazing, and I had one friend who offered to clean my bathroom for me. And that's
quite an intimate thing.
I know.
Clean somebody's bathroom.
She's like, I hate cooking. I can't cook, but I can clean. Yeah. So can I come round and please clean your bathroom? And I've got an old scuzzy bathroom. It is 1970s, disgusting, horrible kind of. It's hard to clean. It's hard to use. It's not nice. Anyway, she turned up and I was like, oh, well, it'll probably only take her like half an hour or so. Anyway, like 2 hours later, she came out. She had her socks and shoes off. Her pants were rolled up. Her hair was flying everywhere. She was hot and sweaty. And she was like, I couldn't believe it. And she
clean. It was
she
a deep
gave
clean.
It obviously hadn't been cleaned for a while. But, she came out like completely happy that she had done something. And obviously she had worked hard. So... Yeah. And I was really grateful. Initially, I was like, oh, no, because, bathroom and toilet are gross. But
I know.
But it was helpful. It was helpful. And,
that's interesting.
Yeah, and people picking up the kids for play dates has been, if you've got children, that's been quite helpful too because...
It's hard to get them around.
Just to get them out of the house, give them a break from me being sick and, just entertaining them and keeping them... I've found that quite helpful. People picking up the kids for play dates and stuff.
What about the flip side to that? Were there any times when, and you maybe don't want to be too specific, for fear of hurting somebody's feelings, but were there occasions when you maybe felt your boundaries were crossed and that a well-meaning individual had really had the opposite impact for you?
I've found sometimes people say to me, "Oh, you shouldn't, you shouldn't be eating dairy or meat, or do this," and they are all well intentioned, but it's really. I just got really, really overwhelmed and bombarded at the start. It took me a while to sort of think about, okay, what am I going to do? I've got my chemo plan, and then there are alternative treatments. Like the first thing I thought of was that woman I have talked about previously who overcame cancer, who had the bowel cancer, and I was like, I rang her and said, what did you do? What did you take? What kind of herbal supplements did you take? And, I just wanted to copy her. So... I did things like that. But
was that in consultation with your oncologist?
Yes.
And what was his viewpoint?
He kind of was like, he's very sciencey and is basically everything has to be evidence based. And I think, his advice was basically eat nuts and exercise. It was nuts, exercise, and
nuts. Who knew?
Like
why nuts? Did he say?
Probably, I can't remember.
Right.
They're healthy. Maybe they could have anti-cancer fighting things in them.
Interesting.
I clearly listened to him. I can't remember what he said. Oh my God. But anyway, I copied some of the things. So I started doing a bit of acupuncture and taking... I still haven't done one of the things that she did, and that was eat... So there's apricot kernels, and inside the apricot kernel there's a little thing, a little stony thing.
Yep.
What is that called?
An apricot nut.
Anyway,
I know what you mean.
You crush it up, you ground it up.
Yeah.
You ground up these apricots. So I had all my friends, I had everybody bringing me apricot stones, and my stepdad and son were breaking the stones and bringing me the little kernel. And so we are blitzing them. So they've got cyanide in them, so you can't take too much.
Oh, like
And-
apple pips too do, right? Apple seeds do as well.
And there is something, I think, on the Ministry of
Yeah, like a warning thing.
saying don't take them because they contain cyanide.
So is the hope there that the cyanide might help kill the cancer?
Yeah. I don't know. This was something that she had been told by someone else who beat cancer, and it's some sort of...
Right.
So I was kind of like, well, whatever you're doing, I want to do. But I've just been a wee bit nervous, so I haven't quite done it yet. So I've got a whole heap of squashed apricot kernels in my cupboard that I'm just kind of like
That does
waiting
feel
for-
potentially risky.
You just take a little bit.
Yeah.
So
What's a little bit?
like a capsule, like quarter of a teaspoon maybe.
What about, but maybe a half teaspoon's too much. Don't want to
Die of
kill
cyanide
yourself.
poison
Exactly.
before cancer kills me.
Well, you don't want to kill yourself along with it,
I don't know.
mm.
Yeah, and then I tried some Chinese herbal medicines, so I had a selection of them, and I wasn't sure about that, and the oncologist kind of was like, But anyway, I had them
because
sitting
is there a
there.
risk any of those things would interfere with your drug plan?
Maybe.
So that's
Kind
what
of,
that's what I was getting at. I
Yeah,
suppose.
I don't know, but yeah, I was always a bit nervous to talk to Chris about that because I knew he'd say don't do it. I think.
Yeah, right. Interesting.
But yeah. So I've taken some weird concoctions, like these Chinese herbal medicines were, yeah.
So
it was
beyond-
like drinking soil, and I don't know what I was
Drinking soil?
It tasted like that. It was brown,
Oh.
and there were 5 different things, and I don't know what they had. I don't know what I was drinking. One of them said semen on the label, and I just gulped it down. I was like, so I don't know what was in there, but my cancer markers kept going up, so it
So
didn't work.
gratefully stopped that.
I stopped that. But, yeah.
So what is so you've got this intense drug regime that you're now on, which will be assumably making you feel quite shitty. So what other kind of acts of self-care were you trying to make time for? What does it look like to look after your whole self? Was it super critical to you that that your hair was washed and clean, or that you slept in a nice bed at night, or were the other little things that you did that were important to you in your daily ritual that were helped? Because you've got this great spirit about your journey, and I don't think that comes from the hard parts of your journey. I feel like that's you've built that in. I'm curious to find out how you've built that into your journey. Love the word journey.
Having a shower definitely helps. I've tried to. It's been hard, but I'm trying to have routines because one of the things I've found really hard is, not working. And I'm used to working, I'm used to being busy, and just having that ripped away from me and being left kind of extremely tired, some days nauseous. My body can be really, really sore, and I don't want to move, and it's really, really hard to just get up and function and be feeling like I'm part of society. You kind of sometimes feel like the world is moving around you and you're just observing it. And
so what does your day-to-day at this point, and maybe it's the same now, but what does your day-to-day support look like? Like, who are the people coming into your life on the daily? What are they doing for you?
So my parents are there every day, and they help with the kids, and they help with
Life.
Some days I've needed help getting dressed. I've needed help having a shower. I've needed help getting off the toilet. I had to get some equipment that old people have. I've got a thing on the toilet because I couldn't get off the toilet, so I've got a seat in the shower. I can't have a bath. I found that out because hot water
Makes you dizzy, does it?
No, I get stuck. I couldn't get physically out of the bath. Hot water soothes my joints. That feels really nice. But yeah, I got stuck in the bath and had to call for help. I was home alone, and I couldn't. My wrists and hands, I couldn't get out, and with my legs, and so I had to wait in the bath until I got rescued.
How long was the bath still hot?
No, I'd pulled the plug out to get out, and I was stuck in an empty, cold, slippery bath. Yeah, and so luckily, I had some assistance in the end, but it was quite.
So, I don't know your mum, but I've seen lots of clips and kind of posts from you on social about you and your mum, and often you guys are laughing together. And I wonder, whether like what your diagnosis has done, how it has built that relationship with your mum. Are you closer than ever because you have to be? Is it more challenging? Is it harder on your relationship or all your relationships really?
I would say it probably has brought us closer, but at the same time, there's almost like an elephant in the room with us because she tries to hide her fear of what's happening and tries to be strong, but I can see that, and sometimes she can be kind of a bit manic and run around the house trying to do things and, she tries to do everything and she just needs to sit down and, I can feel her stress and anxiety.
Is she keeping herself crazy busy so she doesn't have to face some of those thoughts, do you think?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But then a lot of the times she is strong and she's helping me and is giving me a hug and she's just saying, I wish I could take this away, but I don't know how and I can't do anything. I don't know what to say. I have no words and all I can do is just, and she said not living is not an option. She said that isn't going to be you. So, and we go.
How amazing.
Yeah. And at the start she slept with me a lot.
I remember that. I remember seeing you like two spoons in the bed. And
God.
It shows a lot of vulnerability, but also a lot of love between the two of you.
It's really difficult because I'm a really independent person and I am like, Mum, don't suffocate me. Since my brother died, I really have to put up a bit of a thing with Mum and be like, I'm her only child now, I'm her world, but, there's a bit of like...
Back up the bus a bit.
Yeah, sometimes it's like, but with being sick, it's kind of like I can feel suffocated, but I need her. So there's a tension there, and sometimes we can fight and bicker, and then, but immediately after that, we'll cry and say sorry, and, she knows I'm a bit drugged up and stressed and stuff, and so we're close enough to be able to do that, and she knows that if I lash out, it's
circumstantial.
Yeah, and same with her. So, yeah, I don't know. It's really, there's pressure.
Is it the same of all your relationships? Because Michael's obviously been an amazing support to you, right?
Yeah, so he lives 3 hours away, but he is with me as much as he can be. He's got 2 children at home that he cares for as well. He co-parents, and it is really hard for him to be away, and he wants to be by my side all the time, and but when he's up, he's really been instrumental in being quite a rock for me and putting me back on track. We'll go to appointments with Chris, my oncologist, and Chris will say something and I'll come out and be like, oh, that was terrible. Like, oh no, like what about this and this? And Michael will be like, Joe, he didn't say it like that. He said it like this. I didn't take any negatives out of that appointment. He means, so he is
an antidote to some of your feelings.
Yeah, and and he's kind of like, he's quite calm and he's quite pragmatic, and he writes lists and he's quite organised, and he's kind of focused, and he's like, right, what are 5 things you're going to do each day to fight cancer? And right, you need to have a routine going because you can't lie on the couch all day and feel like crap. You need to get up. He's quite motivating. And some days I'm like, oh, I'm sick, and I might moan and bitch back at him. But
what are some of the things you do every day to fight cancer?
So exercise. I'm trying to do exercise. Another one was get up early, like get up at a regular time. So I'm not, get up and get dressed.
Yep.
Read something positive, like read a book, or get my brain
Engage
going.
your brain.
Yeah. Do something healthy, like have some of that semen syrup. Oh, that sounded really rude. I mean, like have.
I think we know what you mean.
Like do something, have some
supplement
or acupuncture or just I guess just try and de-stress. I had to talk to a counsellor once a week, which is quite helpful. But it definitely puts pressure and strain on relationships because it feels like the cancer is always there. It's like I can't drive to Invercargill and see him anymore because I can't drive. I can drive, but I won't drive 3 hours. I'm too tired and sometimes my joints don't work. So he has to come see me. We've been together for a few years, but it feels like we can't progress things because I've got cancer and I don't know what lies ahead. So I'm scared about
you're in a holding pattern.
Yeah.
You're in a holding pattern relationship wise.
Kind of, yeah. It kind of rules our life. And, there's things that he's been wanting to do that he's had to put on hold for me and it feels like it's just going to be never ending. It's really hard. And sometimes it's like people come from places of well-being and put advice onto me and I'm sick and it doesn't necessarily it's harder, some things that I get people think I can do, I can't. If that makes sense.
It does.
I think
there are probably other things that people assume you can't do that you can.
Some things too is I look healthy. You
actually do. Sitting here now looking at you, you look like a healthy woman.
I haven't lost much of my hair. One drug has thinned it out, but for the most part, I've got my hair. I'm not on steroids anymore, so I've lost a lot of that steroid puff. I actually look like I don't have cancer, and so people think that I am well, but actually I'm not. Which is sometimes it's hard because you don't want to tell people that you're sick, but you feel like crap, and it's like, I look well, but I'm actually really struggling today, and I can't do these things. I can't do these normal things that everyone thinks I can do and expects me to do. Sometimes I'm so tired with the kids, or I'm cooking dinner, or and I just
nothing left in the tank.
Yeah. And with relationships, it can be a bit like that too.
That sounds like a next episode. You've been listening to Joe versus Cancer with Joe McKenzie-McLean and me, Colleen O'Hanlon. We know our conversations might be a tough listen, whether you've got cancer or you're caring for somebody who has. There's lots of support available and there's information in the show notes. This is a Stuff podcast produced by Chris Reed. You can listen to the full series at stuff.co.nz or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening. Kia kaha, be strong.